Okay, so I'm presenting a deaf misconception. In this recorded slide presentation, I'll go over a common misconception about deaf people and fix this wrongful idea with factual information. Get my laser pointer up here, come on. Oh, I guess I can't, it won't let me. So I'm technically going over two misconceptions, but I found that they're fairly connected, so I chose to roll them both into one. The misconception being, if a person can hear some things, they're not deaf, or if a person uses hearing aids or cochlear implants, they are or should be able to communicate using speech in the same way a hearing person does. I'm just going to go through my ASL coding here real quick. It's coding of this paragraph up here. I really explained to wrong idea now that that's a declarative sentence. We've got RHQ, that means rhetorical, so why, I believe both connect. ING, not a thing in ASL. Topic, to idea, both from same communication, expect from hearing people. I explained both now. So that would be an example of coding. Coding usually isn't read out loud, that's why it sounds kind of goofy to hearing English speakers. It's meant to be signed, but I wanted to go over it anyways. Explanation and facts. There are various types of hearing loss, each with their own various causes and effects on the ability of deaf or hard of hearing people to perceive sound. The three main types of hearing loss are conductive, sensory neural, and mixed. The most difficult thing for most people to grasp is that struggling to hear certain sounds has just as much or more to do with the specific pitches and harmonics that combine to create that sound and the ear's ability to detect those pitches than the volume of the sound. So the volume of the sound, the pitches matter as much or even maybe more than the volume of the sound, depending on the person's type of hearing loss. Sensory neural and mixed hearing loss are the most common types, and they are commonly permanent. They are very commonly, they're common diagnoses of the permanent condition of hearing loss or profound deafness. Both of those types are often related to damage to hair cells in an organ known as the cochlea in the inner ear called the audiocilia. Those hairs closest to where the sound signals enter the organ, those are the ones that detect high-pitched sounds, and they're also the most exposed to noise and damaged or killed most often. That's why high-pitched sounds often go first when somebody begins losing their hearing. As you can see here, the stereocilia towards the outermost portion of the cochlea are here. They're most exposed to the damaging noises, and they're more vulnerable to damage or cell death, and they're primarily responsible for detecting high-frequency sounds. So in order for a person who is deaf to use their hearing aids, in order for them to be able to hear a single word exactly the same way a hearing person would with those hearing aids, they would need to not have any stereocilia that correspond with the pitches of the speech sound be damaged. So, obviously, someone with hearing loss, they've got damage to the stereocilia, likely, and so it's not likely that, it's likely that specific words, they can hear the whole thing, it's not distorted or muffled, there's not sounds that they can't hear, but there's also many, many words in which they can't hear certain sounds at all, regardless of if the hearing aid is making them louder, and that goes for hard of hearing people as well. I experienced this where it's kind of awkward when you're like, oh, I'm hard of hearing, just so you know, and then people start talking in an annoyingly loud voice, and that's unhelpful because it doesn't help me to understand their speech sounds, because there are ones that I can't hear depending on the pitch of that specific sound, because I'm not profoundly deaf. I am deaf with a capital D, as in part of the deaf community being hard of hearing, and preferring sign language, but for me it's not as, I would say that, I don't know where I was going with that. Sorry, Pam. Alright. This is just an example anyways. CD 100 is where I got my information. Introduction to Human Communication Disorders, University of Minnesota Duluth, 2025. So I got one of my images here. So why is it harmful? So the assumption that a person's hearing ability is greater than, or in some cases less than, what is actually perceived by a deaf or hard of hearing person is very harmful because it creates these expectations that are unrealistic for that person and for other people's ability to understand spoken language, because some deaf people use spoken language, some don't. It's not fair to see one that does and expect everyone to, because their hearing needs are different, or maybe they lost their hearing later in life or earlier in life, and that all definitely relates to how they are or are not able to use spoken language. So it's very harmful to them because it's stressful. It can make them feel isolated. In a lot of cases, they can't be helped. They struggle to get help in an emergency situation because people don't understand them. They don't know how to communicate with them. So that's where it gets really dangerous. It's also harmful to hearing people to be ignorant about the communication needs of those in the deaf community. Being unwilling or ignorant to accommodate public and institutional spaces to the needs of deaf individuals causes hearing people to lose out on wonderful friendships and exposure to a perspective different from their own. But in an even more dire circumstance, emergency responders who may fail to aid deaf or hard of hearing people who need help, especially life-saving help, can acquire huge amounts of mental distress from the incident and any guilt they may carry surrounding it if they're unable to help a person because they can't communicate with them. So over here I've got this little image that I drew up, and it would be an example of without hearing aids. As you can see, some sounds, some letters representing sounds are fully missing. Some are distorted, partly missing, making it harder to read. With hearing aids, it's a little clearer, it's a lot bigger, and so it's easier to quote-unquote fill in the blanks there because it's amplified. Gives you more of a chance to figure out what's being said, but it's not perfect. Some of those sounds are still distorted, and some of them are still missing. The hearing aid can't repair the stereocilia. It can't force you to hear something when the receptor is dead, if that makes sense. So here are my resources. This is to the article I included on the past page, and info on UMD's Deaf Studies Cut. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.